Welcome, welcome, welcome to the deep dive. You know that feeling, don't you? That buzz, that kind of electric hum of anticipation when a new game pops up. Especially a huge online world. You've seen the trailers, you've read all the hype, and well, your imagination is already picturing it, right? Diving in, ready to conquer, explore, become a legend. But then then the game actually starts. And sometimes that amazing vision just smashes like head on into the really jarring, often totally baffling reality of modern game design.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about the journey you shared with us is just how clearly your experiences echo these bigger, sometimes kind of worrying shifts in how games are made today. There's this constant tension, this friction between what you, the player, want to do, feel powerful, make a real impact, and what the game's design intends for you to do. It's a pattern we see again and again, and your feedback really captures it in a way that's, well, it's sharp, and honestly, pretty entertaining too.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into that exact thing. The fascinating, the frustrating, and, as we're about to find out, the often completely absurd world of modern game design. And this whole exploration, it's all seen through the incredibly vivid and often hilarious lens of your experiences with what we're kind of affectionately calling the Clownocalypse MMO. Our mission today is pretty clear. We want to unpack these truly baffling design choices, try to figure out the why behind them, even if the why seems totally backwards, and really get to the heart of what makes a game feel genuinely engaging versus one that just feels, I don't know, engineered, like it's built by spreadsheet.
And it's really, really important to frame this right from the start. We're not just talking about minor bugs here or, little glitches or even just personal pet peeves you might have. What we're seeing in your accounts, these are systemic things. They're fundamental shifts in the philosophy of game development today. They actually reshape the whole idea of fun, of progression, of feeling satisfied in these huge online worlds, these design choices. They directly hit how you experience the game. And often, it leads to this really weird sense of disconnect.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole wild journey you've shared into the Clownocalypse MMO. We're starting with something absolutely fundamental to RPGs, right? The illusion of progress. That moment, that really soul-crushing moment, when all your hard work, all your gains somehow just make you feel weaker. It just turns the whole idea of getting stronger completely on its head.
And this immediately brings up a really critical idea in gaming, something we've seen sort of slowly fade away, the death of the power fantasy. Think about the thrill you get from alpha builds or early access games. There's this unique kind of joy in those early stages, isn't there? The mechanics often feel like exaggerated, experimental.
Yeah.
And honestly, they're just plain fun. Developers are often just playing, creating, it's like a raw collaborative sandbox with the players. It's where creativity really runs wild and you get to be part of shaping something really raw and exciting. The potential feels huge because the rules aren't totally set in stone yet.
Oh, absolutely. You grab a skill, maybe something like, I don't know, chain through enemies and blazing speed like you mentioned. And in that early phase, you feel like God. You're tearing through stuff, feeling that raw thrill of being really powerful. You're thinking, yes, this is it. This is amazing. That's the magic, right? But then, inevitably, as the game moves towards launch, down comes the nerf hammer. Bam!
Yep.
That exact same skill, the one that made you feel awesome, feel unstoppable. It gets, like you said, nerfed into oblivion. It goes from this epic chain through enemies thing to this pathetic, almost insulting deal 10 damage to a single enemy. It's not just balancing. It feels like a gut punch, like they're taking away the fun they just gave you.
And this big shift, which your experiences show so clearly, it's almost always done in the name of balance. That's the justification. They say it's needed for competitive play, maybe, or to fit into a more structured long-term progression. But the impact on the player, it's huge. The game gets slower. Maybe it's more fair if you look at the numbers, but crucially, it's just way less thrilling. It's a fundamental change in focus away from letting the player live out a fantasy towards this rigid, often competitive balance. Which leads to a really important question for players like you. Is fun, like pure, unfiltered fun, inherently unbalanced? And if it is, does it always have to be sacrificed for structure, for fairness, for these planned-out progression systems? It suggests this design idea that perfect balance equals enjoyment, which, as you found out, just isn't always true. Developers might be chasing this perfect balance because they're scared players will break their content, but sometimes they just break the player's enjoyment instead.
That's such a key question, and it leads right into what you called out as maybe one of the biggest, most common modern design sins. Level scaling enemies. You level up, you feel that rush, that power boost, and then the world just catches up instantly. You get stronger, so everything else gets stronger, and weirdly, you end up feeling weaker sometimes, or maybe just the same. So yeah, what is the point? Why even bother leveling if the world just erases your progress?
It's a design choice that just demolishes the progression fantasy. And for a lot of us, that's the absolute core loop, the main satisfaction. In so many RPGs and action games, you spend hours training, you put in the time leveling up, you grind for that cool gear. The basic expectation, the fantasy, is that you should then be able to just crush weaker enemies. You should feel stronger, feel your mastery over the world grow. But instead, like you described so well, the rats in the basement now scale with you and hit like mini-bosses. It immediately clashes with all the effort you put in.
The rats. Oh man, your description of those rats, I can practically feel the frustration. It's completely backwards, isn't it? It feels like the game is actively punishing you for getting better, for leveling up. This constant scaling just makes the whole world feel totally static, like you never actually conquer anything. You don't feel like you're growing within the world. You're just stuck on this endless treadmill where every step you take forward, the world takes one too. Any sense of achievement just gets wiped out.
Exactly. And this often happens because developers are trying too hard to fix player power creep, this idea that players get too strong too fast and make content trivial. But instead of embracing that natural power growth, which is what makes RPGs feel good, they slap on systems like level scaling. It's an attempt to keep things casual-friendly, maybe, so a level 10 can play with a level 50 in the same area and face a similar challenge. But it completely gets in the way of feeling like you've actually mastered anything. It kills that core satisfaction of growth. It really suggests a design philosophy that values constant friction, or maybe just engagement time, over actual fun and the feeling of becoming powerful. You know, that phrase, clowns running the gaming to the ground, while maybe a bit harsh, it points to this feeling that publishers and data people are tuning games just for metrics, daily login, session length, instead of just raw fun. It's like they're scared players will run out of things to do, but ironically, it makes players quit because nothing feels rewarding.
Which brings us right back to the core absurdity. How do they think players stay engaged when that same rat, the one that needed like 10 damage at the start, suddenly needs 10,000 damage after you've leveled up like crazy? It's pure clownery, like you said. You go through all that effort to feel stronger, the rat levels with you, and boom, you're doing the same effective damage, maybe even less, to a basic rat. It's not just annoying. It breaks that fundamental promise between the player and the game. Your effort should make you more capable.
And the why behind it, like you pointed out, often comes down to chasing fake engagement metrics and player retention graphs. It feels like you're not optimizing for player joy. They're optimizing to keep you logged in, keep that timer running. Level scaling becomes this easy, almost lazy way to balance everything, instead of, actually designing different zones with meaningful difficulty curves. It creates this illusion of progress. You get a shiny new sword, plus 50 damage, great. But instantly, all the mobs get triple health, so nothing really changed. It's a treadmill. And smart players like you eventually figure out that combat isn't exciting anymore. It's just a chore. And that kills the magic. People quit. The irony, as you mentioned, is that lots of older games that let you become totally broken, wonderfully overpowered, they're still super fun today precisely because they respected player power. Modern design often feels like it sees players having fun and thinks, oh no, they're having fun too fast. Nerf it, scale it, before they finish our content.
So true. It's like the absolute peak of a reverse power fantasy. You spend ages questing, exploring dungeons. You finally get this legendary sword, forged in dragonfire, blessed by gods. And the game just shrugs and says, cool, that does 14 damage now. Meanwhile, that same common rat from the starting zone, apparently it's been hitting the gym, eating drywall, and now it hits like a mountain of rocks, and it's immune to your legendary sword. It's not just that you scale up. It feels like you're scaling down while everything else just powers up inexplicably. Your epic weapon feels totally useless.
That's exactly it. Primetime design inversion. The whole game just feels like a constant struggle, an uphill slog, instead of a journey where your effort actually pays off in a real, tangible way. In this Clownocalypse MMO, like you said, effort reward, level AA power, progression freedom. And it's all supposedly done to keep the challenge consistent or stop players one-shotting things. As if after hundreds of hours grinding to kill gods, one-shotting a goblin isn't exactly the satisfying reward you earned. It feels like they fundamentally misunderstand why people play these games.
And it just gets weirder when you find out that the starting zone rat, that tiny thing you met in minute 1, now has more health and hits harder than the end boss of phase 1. It makes you seriously wonder what kind of logic, if any, is driving these decisions. How can you build up this epic threat, this boss, only for it to be numerically weaker than a basic enemy you fight every day?
Yeah, when a starting rat outstats a major boss, the game isn't just unbalanced. It's like the narrative just collapses. It's creative bankruptcy. And this points to a big problem in modern AAA design. It's often algorithmically safe, you know? Very risk-averse. It's designed for metrics, not for those amazing, memorable moments that players create themselves, like finally getting that overpowered lightning blade and just slicing through everything, or finding some clever double jump trick to get somewhere you shouldn't. Those are the things people remember for years. But this current approach, it leads straight into what you call the logic labyrinth, where the rules are wildly inconsistent and immersion just completely breaks down.
Yeah, that's exactly where the whole sense of believability, the game's internal logic just falls apart. You're playing this character who can swing skyscraper-sized maces, right? A warrior who crushes dragons. But suddenly you can't pick a simple stone flower off the ground because, wait for it, you don't have enough herb skill. It's peak RPG absurdity. Your character is basically a demigod, but can't handle basic gardening.
And that, my friend, is what we've dubbed skill gate syndrome.
You, the player, you have superhuman strength. You're decked out in legendary gear that could probably crash the economy. You've survived lava, poison, arrows, betrayals, and the game just stops you dead and says, "Whoa there, hero, that's a stone flower. Need herbalism 15 for that. Go read a book, dummy." It completely shatters any illusion of reality. It interrupts the gameplay flow so harshly you just stop and think, wait, I can kill demons, but I can't pick weeds. It turns simple, low-level stuff, things that might even introduce new players to systems, into these weird artificial roadblocks. It's just friction for the sake of friction. And it's not just flowers, is it? It's the same problem everywhere. You need lockpicking 45 to open this basic wooden chest that looks like a stiff breeze could open it. Or your mining skill is too low to pick up this small rock, even though you can lift mountains. Or, even more nuts, you can't read the scroll because lore skill isn't high enough, even if you're playing like a god-tier mage who talks to cosmic beings. It honestly feels like a game designed with zero soul, just mechanics duct taped onto reality with no thought for consistency. What if, games let you try things first and only gated mastery? Like, you could pick the flower, but maybe it's not very good until you level the skill.
This kind of patchwork design inevitably creates this totally inconsistent, nonsensical power curve. You mentioned going into a Phase 2 raid solo, sitting through 5 minutes of unskippable cutscene story that's already feeling shaky, by the way.
Yes.
Only to then just absolutely smoke the huge 5-headed dragon boss in, 3 seconds? But right after that epic win, you're still struggling with those nightmare starting zone rats.
Yeah.
And you still can't pick that darn stone flower. And the kicker, that flower supposedly drops stuff for a hammer that would probably heal the rats instead of hurting them.
Bonk. Dragon gone. Poof. Rat. I eat dragons for lunch, it squeaks back. Flower. Nope, not for you. Sits there mocking you. The legendary hammer.
Yeah, it heals the rats. It's a statistical clown world, a carnival of contradictions. The power curve is flat, then spikes insanely for bosses, then drops back down for basic stuff. Item logic is flipped on its head. A legendary hammer made from divine petals actually empowers early mobs. The rules aren't just made up, they're inconsistent and totally disrespectful to common sense or basic progression. It's beyond bad design, it's like a self-parody. And this raises that really important question again. How are the designers of this Clownocalypse MMO even defining challenge and fun? Is it really about a meaningful journey, about growth? Or is it just about creating friction, making players grind endlessly no matter how strong they actually are? And what happens when, like you said, a common piece of cloth gear, maybe something you bought for almost nothing, is actually better for tanking than a legendary set of mithril plate armor that took weeks of high-level raiding to get? You mentioned selling off that legendary plate, a symbol of past victories, because it was from the last phase, and totally useless now. Couldn't even handle 3 rats in the starting zone, while your enchanted bathrobe basically became the best tank gear available.
Yes. That legendary mithril plate forged in the fiery breath of the Phase 1 boss, full of ancient power. Now it's vendor trash. But a common cloth tunic, maybe stitched by someone's grandma, with a basic defense rune, that's suddenly your best in slot tanking gear. So now you're running into battle wearing enchanted pajamas, basically, selling off ancient relics for pennies, losing 1v3 fights to rats, and then somehow one-shotting world-ending dragons seconds later, all while still being too unskilled to pick a common flower. It's the logical, if completely absurd, result of live balance patches plus scaling plus system creep. Old legendary gear isn't just outgrown, it's made obsolete because the devs decided loot needs to be fresh every patch, which just means an artificial power reset. And common gear with the right enchant becomes meta because numbers beat lore, common sense, everything. Grandma's pajamas plus Rune of Fortitude beats Godsteel. That's the Clownocalypse MMO.
This completely bizarre situation leads us perfectly into the next stage. Unintended features and, well, total narrative collapse.
Duh.
This is where the game itself, through its own contradictions and weird emergent behaviors, really just becomes a cursed physics experiment. The game's reality starts to bend and break in ways that are, well, fascinating, if incredibly frustrating.
Okay, here's where it gets really wild,
Sure.
or maybe just unbelievably absurd. You found out, almost by mistake, that there's this hidden 50% swimming buff in the game, and this buff turns out to be secretly overpowered
Right.
because the game's physics just kind of give up sometimes, and players find themselves literally swimming in the air. You're not just walking around, you're gliding through the broken collision mesh, often way above the ground like some kind of sky mermaid.
So this air swimming accidentally becomes the real S-tier passive ability, not by design, but because the game engine just can't tell ground from water anymore. It leads to these totally unexpected moments, like finding yourself poolside way up in the sky, completely outside where you're supposed to be. It's a perfect example of emergent gameplay, but born from really fundamental flaws. And what's even wilder is the game's attempt to explain it in the lore. Due to planar instability, gravitational boundaries are now porous. It's fascinating how players adapt their strategies around such a huge bug, and how their whole view of the game world, its rules, its limits changes when physics are just optional and exploitable. It becomes less about the intended fantasy and more about finding the glitches in the system.
And speaking of glitches and broken rules, let's talk about the absolute absurdity of the elemental damage system. You described getting ready for a raid in a fiery cave packed with fire elementals, so you and your team did the sensible thing. Stacked fire resistance, got fireproof buffs, everything you need for a literal inferno, but then your pajama-clad, fully fire-resisted, high-health tank kept getting instantly killed by frost shock abilities, coming from the fire elementals made of pure fire. You just can't make this stuff up. The game actively punishes you for logically preparing based on its own rules.
Yeah, exactly. Inversion successful, sanity check failed. At that point, the Clownocalypse MMO stops being a game and becomes more like, I don't know, a live-action performance piece about spectacular design failure. You geared up for fire, you expected fire, and instead, you get one-shotted by ice from fire mobs in a lava cave while wearing meta pajamas. It shows this huge, almost mean-spirited disconnect where the game's own internal logic, its world, its lore, actively fights against your reasonable actions. It's like the design parameters just steamroll common sense, leaving you totally confused and frustrated, questioning if you're crazy, not the game.
And the absolute cherry on top of this narrative collapse Sunday, this creative bankruptcy, is the truly pathetic end of the eternal arch-warlock, devourer of suns. This cosmic super threat, the guy meant to be the terrifying final boss of Phase 5, he apparently bugged out and got killed by two vendor ladies named Brenda and Marlene during a normal quest turn-in. In town, the dialogue you remembered, priceless. Warlock shows up, yells, "You dare!" And Brenda just cuts him off. "Not in front of the counter!" Poof! Azrael has died. It's comedy, it's tragedy, it's everything wrong, and somehow hilariously right about this game all at once.
That moment perfectly captures this fundamental, maybe even unavoidable, clash between the big story ambitions and the messy reality of the game systems. The game's epic lore just becomes collateral damage from its own buggy physics and weird quest triggers. The ultimate bad guy, a Star Eater, gets accidentally deleted by two random shopkeepers who, as you pointed out, probably have like 12 HP and only SAS-based DPS. It's a moment where the game's own rules just completely undercut its grand story, leaving players in this absurd reality that makes no sense compared to the supposed narrative stakes. The designer's vision got totally sabotaged by their own creation.
And this never-ending stream of absurdities, these system failures, it naturally leads us to who the real villains are and why players started leaving. Because after dealing with all this, the crazy scaling, the weird damage types, items making no sense, swimming in the air, the community, collectively started pointing fingers. Community polls, which really show what players are thinking, overwhelmingly showed something amazing. 60% of players thought the game director was the real villain, not Exarzel, not even the killer rats. The director.
And the developer's response to this really critical feedback: silence. Crickets. Followed by, tellingly, locking the forum threads discussing it for off-topic lore speculation. That's basically a modern MMO Greek tragedy right there. Players finally figure out the game isn't just broken, it's designed this way. It's working as intended, however badly. This raises huge questions about trust between players and developers, doesn't it? When the community clearly identifies the source of their frustration and the response is basically censorship, it just destroys that relationship. It suggests a dev team that either won't or can't listen to criticism, or maybe they're just stuck following orders from higher up that ignore the player experience.
And just to add insult to injury, they released new talents in later patches that seemed almost like deliberate satire, like Beast Slayer, right? A 5-point talent giving care plus 1% damage against beasts with hammers per point. Totally useless against the actual problem beasts, those unkillable rats. Or how about Soul of the Demon, a 3-point warrior talent for Imma plus 3% healing towards demons? As a warrior, your only real heal is bandages. You're not a demon, and there's only one demon class in the whole game. It's like these talents are made by an algorithm that never played the game. Peak AAA design, maybe. Build something so complex no one knows if it's genius, broken, or just a joke.
And we can't forget them removing the powerful swimming buff, either. Just when players had figured out how to use the broken physics, just when air swimming became the meta way to get around the frustrating world, poof, gone. No explanation. That really shows a dangerous mindset, almost like admitting if players enjoy something too much, it must be a bug we need to fix. It shows a deep misunderstanding of what players find fun and how they naturally interact with, and yes, sometimes break a game world. It feels hostile to player creativity.
And then the final narrative insult, the thing that really truly broke the community's spirit. After everything sky swimming, demon healing warriors, ice casting fire elementals, pajamas being better than legendary plate, rats being tougher than bosses, cosmic warlocks getting killed by shopkeepers, the grand reveal for the next big villain, the next major threat, his name was Larry the Menace. Just Larry. Described as, like, some wanderer who was hidden the whole time making some evil plans.
That name drop, that utterly underwhelming reveal, as you saw, it triggered a huge exodus. Players just left for indie games, for games that seemed to respect them and make sense. Official forum polls basically declared the game dead in the eyes of its core players. After all that build-up, all the weirdness, the climax is just Larry. It showed this profound, almost unbelievable tone deafness in the game's design and its grasp of storytelling. That really was the final straw, wasn't it? It cemented the feeling that the game wasn't taking itself seriously where it mattered, or worse, it was taking itself way too seriously in all the wrong ways, chasing metrics instead of making a good experience.
This whole bizarre chain of events really highlights the big contrast, doesn't it? Between AAA and indie game development, it feels like a battle of heart versus metrics. Because the Clownocalypse MMO, remember, this isn't some small indie project made by a few people. No, this is from a multi-billion-dollar company. And that fact alone implies a certain kind of design philosophy, one that runs through everything.
It's exactly. These massive AAA products, they're usually tuned meticulously for retention metrics. They're built around engagement loops to get you logging in daily. They're algorithmically safe, very risk-averse. They feel designed for spreadsheets, for KPIs, not for those unforgettable player-driven moments that make games special. And the price for that super-optimized data-first approach, often its flawless animations, amazing graphics, and absolutely zero soul. The main goal becomes keeping players subscribed, keeping them buying microtransactions, often at the cost of actual fun, real progression, or just the joy of finding something cool. The games feel like polished spreadsheets, not living worlds.
And then you look at the indie scene, totally different world. You've got solo devs, small teams, pouring love into hand-coding a squirrel that reacts to the wind realistically, or making pixel art games where the combat, the loot, the progression, it just makes sense. It feels good. And the difference, it's often simple. Indie devs usually still play games themselves. They get that players want to break stuff in fun ways, feel clever, feel powerful. They get that legendary gear should feel legendary, not like a temporary stat boost. They want rats to be rats, you know. Easy starter enemies, not endgame bosses with PhDs and kicking your butt. They understand player agency.
And this huge philosophical gap metrics versus heart, it leads to some really unique player stories. None more symbolic than your own accidental trip to enlightenment. You describe jumping off the map while air swimming thanks to the broken physics and somehow ending up in this weird empty place. Probably a dev test land, right? Somewhere players should never see.
Right. And in this weird out-of-bounds area, I found these test mobs. And hilariously, some rats that did 0 damage but gave insane amounts of experience. So I leveled to max in like 15 minutes when I thought it'd take another week of grinding. Then I just poured it out. And for 3 days, nothing. No rollback, no ban. It wasn't just a bug. It felt like, yeah, a pilgrimage, like you said. I literally broke through the content wall, bypassed the whole messed up progression system. I walked through the game's broken backstage areas and came back, carrying forbidden knowledge I'd seen behind the curtain.
You became, in MMO terms, the untouched one. A player who hit max level not by following the tedious intended path, not through raids, but by slipping through the game's own cracks and basically harvesting developer oversights. And the funniest, most telling part, it was all an accident. Pure accidental brilliance. You just swam through the sky, bopped some harmless mobs in limbo, and broke the endgame progression by mistake. And the game never even acknowledged it. No pop-up, no achievement, nothing. Just left you with this permanent, game-breaking power and nothing meaningful left to do. like a silent punishment for knowing too much, for seeing how the sausage was made. That accidental game break became your ultimate end game. A story way better than anything the designers planned.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener, the player who just wanted a good game? You didn't just play this game. You literally smashed through its foundations, explored its digital underworld, and saw exactly how it was put together, flaws and all. You became a witness, maybe even a survivor, of the MMO Clownocalypse. And you came away with insights you'd never get from just playing normally.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe think about this. In a world where these huge companies design games that feel more like spreadsheets driven by metrics, where every choice seems filtered through retention rates and engagement loops, what does that really mean for player agency, for actual genuine fun? And what role do we as players have in shaping what comes next? By deciding where we spend our time, our money, by making our expectations clear, we're sending signals about the kinds of games we really want.
Think about what true progression fantasy really looks like to you. Is it about constantly scaling enemies that always make you feel weak? Or is it about earning real power that lets you feel like you've conquered something, that rewards your effort with actual mastery? And maybe the biggest question of all, can the industry ever really balance the demands of balance, especially for competition or making content last longer with just pure, unfiltered fun? That feeling of joy, even when it's a bit broken. Your journey through the Clownocalypse MMO, from expecting an epic adventure to realizing the real villain was the game director and the final boss was just Larry. It's been incredibly revealing. It really shows your sharp eye for these things and how your experience sheds light on the often confusing state of game design right now. Thanks for joining us on this wild, absurd, and ultimately pretty enlightening deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep having fun, even if sometimes you have to accidentally break the game to really figure it out.